you've written your notes and you go into IDR, you go into a board meeting with your little notepad or worse, your iPhone on the notes, the app, right? Versus a binder with an index and very, very detailed, calculated. You don't have to think about it. Like we outlined it for you that in a way that a lawyer would usually approach something. But imagine like showing up with this and it's completely organized, it's succinct. Everything's elevated, at least your vocabulary, and it's like, wow, these are well prepared.
Now you're dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the board doesn't see you scrambling for notes or flipping through a bunch of stuff. They see a very meaningful approach to a dispute. I'm Luke Carlson, and for almost 2 decades, my law firm, LS Carlson Law, has been at the forefront of defending homeowners against overreaching HOAs. We're not just leading the charge, we've created the go-to playbook on how to fight back effectively. Join us as we delve into the world of HOA disputes, sharing insights from our extensive experience and landmark victories. Throughout this podcast, we'll bring you in-depth interviews, demystify complex legal principles, and provide practical tips to safeguard your rights. While the information provided shouldn't be taken as legal advice, our aim is to empower you with the knowledge, strategies, and real-life success stories needed to navigate and overcome the challenges posed by overreaching HOAs. Luke Carlson of LS Carlson Law, welcome back to the podcast, Bad HOA. Co-host Marty, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. And yet again, a very exciting topic and a very powerful tool we're about to release.
Yeah. So there's been some really great developments that we've had over the past several months. And I think it's the year in culmination, honestly.
This is, as I said earlier, this is the bow on top of the year.
Yeah.
Because it really sort of takes all of that information, all of those strategies, all the podcasts that we've done historically, and it is such a tactical, should I just say it? Maybe I'll just say it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. It is a Homeowner Empowerment Kit.
Yeah.
And what it does is it's meant to be deployed by a homeowner because we've given a lot of great information.
We've given a lot of information.
A lot of information. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, how do you take the information and how do you translate it into actual action and movement and ultimately organization?
Yeah.
Because that's really what we hit on over and over again. That is a common thread throughout our messaging is how to organize, how to present to a board, how to go on the offensive in a way that actually moves the needle.
Yeah. And for those who may have or haven't watched the last episode, we just came out with the strike method. Right. Which is like a template on how to take care of an HOA dispute without needing an attorney. And it also outlines some of the red flags that you should be looking for if you need an attorney.
Right. And, with the strike method, what I loved about it, I see that as a compass. And this is the now tactical guide. How do you implement? How do you launch? How do you actually go to war? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it's almost like a map, and here's the.
Hey, we gave you the compass.
Yeah.
Now here's the map and the terrain.
Yeah.
And again, this is we have a disclaimer on it because it's not legal advice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But what it is it helps you as the homeowner to start looking at your dispute in a very clinical, professional, arm's length way.
Yeah.
And say, okay, how do I put this together in a way that actually might get traction with the board?
Yeah.
And so I say we jump right into it.
Let's unveil it. Let's go through it and tell the people what this is, how it benefits them, and just go line by line.
Okay, so again, it's we call it the Homeowner Empowerment Kit, and ultimately it's an organizational tool. And how we rolled it out was very logical. How do we frame the issue? How do we present the evidence? What are the things you think about when putting together a packet?
Yeah. Well, roll it back, 50,000 foot view. You have a dispute that's coming out.
Yep.
You deploy the kit, and the kit takes you step by step on the things that you need to have. Right? Really roll it out. Give us your overview.
So what I've seen historically is homeowners will go to a informal dispute resolution, and we've talked about IDR before.
Yeah.
And I understand sort of why they would show up in a certain way, where they have their CC&Rs, they have some photos, they may or may not have a timeline.
Yeah.
And in my mind, they're not using the most of that meeting, right?
They don't have all the tools at their disposal.
Precisely. And so what you don't want to do in front of anyone, really, if you're presenting, is sort of shuffle through documents and say, well, here's the photo of this, and then they're looking at it and they're getting brought up to speed. What we wanted to do was to consolidate that.
Yeah.
How do you take a board and walk them through a problem where they say, okay, I follow where this homeowner is coming from.
Yeah.
I see the evidence. I understand the evidence. I understand the CC&Rs or the governing documents that they're relying upon. The section is laid out for them. So it lays out your case similar to how maybe even a lawyer would lay out a case, right?
Yeah.
So it was obviously built by a lawyer.
Yeah.
But it was really meant to get the information across in a way that's much more powerful. Because you could have tremendously powerful information. Often homeowners do. But half the battle is just the organizational structure of it and the presentation of it.
Yeah, and the presentation, exactly.
So how we envision this is really meant to be used if you're meeting with a board, if you're bringing forth a dispute, and arguably even if you're meeting with a lawyer during a consultation.
Yeah, this is a layup. If you follow this plan and collect everything in a very organized fashion, you're going to be way ahead. Scott had mentioned in the empowerment series on the power of organization, and it really does. It cuts down time.
Right.
Like this will save you. Like if you go to an attorney and it's an hourly attorney, and they don't have to shuffle through, and they can succinctly gather it. That there's an economic component of that as well. That it's going to save you money.
Right. It saves time, money, but it also allow that attorney to get a better read of what's happening.
Yeah.
So the attorney's not wasting time trying to put it all together. Because ultimately that's how most lawyers operate, right? They want to get the information organized. They want to see the entire, they want to see all the terrain.
Yeah.
And this allows you to do that.
Yeah.
And also it's not a bad idea too. Let's say you do have an IDR or you have a meeting with the board to actually bring this to a lawyer first and tell the lawyer, I want to submit this to the board. I want you to review it first.
Yeah.
Let me know what I can add. It's such an efficient way to leverage a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so that's really the why behind the Empowerment Kit. I say we just jump in and let's go section by section.
Let's do it.
Because each part of the kit is sort of delineated with a section, a topic, and we'll walk everyone through it.
I love it.
All
Let's
right,
go.
Cool. All right, so the first section that we have is the opening statement. And here we give just very practical advice in terms of how to present a case from the get-go. And ultimately, think of it this way. This is an opportunity where you give the elevator pitch of what's happening. It's not meant to go into all the facts. It's not meant to go into all the damages or what you're going to present. It's just seriously an elevator pitch of the dispute. So anyone reading it says, oh, okay, this is, for example, a issue regarding water damage coming from the common area.
Yeah.
The tips here, stick to the facts. Yeah. Avoid that emotion.
Yeah.
This is where you get to show that clinical approach that we've been talking about and harping on.
Yeah.
We also have, do not include any threats or ultimatums. It just doesn't read well.
Yeah.
You got to always think about the audience and who this might get in front of. And
it's never a good thing if you're going to get in front of the board and then, fire at the board while you're trying to get something resolved.
And I get why you would do it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't move the needle.
Right.
And it could be used against you down the road.
Yeah.
So again, opening statement, clinical, keep it to 1, maybe 2 paragraphs at the most. But the opening section, I think, is a very powerful place to start because it's going to frame everything else out from that point on.
Yeah, it's almost like the thesis statement, how you have it in the beginning and the end.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Or if this is the trailer, for a movie, this is the moment you get to tell what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and then the nice thing is that in the kit, when it's all finalized, we have like a section here that says draft.
Right.
Like, so you can just fill in the blank. This is a workable worksheet where you can get in here and actually start putting something together, which is what I really enjoy about this thing. Okay, let's continue.
All right. Next is chronology of events.
Wait. There's actually one key thing you added here that I thought was so interesting was the what I want resolved.
Resolution.
That I think so many people overlook. And we've talked about this in the consultation, in preparing for a consultation. What do you want to achieve?
Right. Because I'm glad you called me on that.
It's so elusive sometimes. Like, I don't know. I just want it to stop. Like, think about it. Like, what do you want the ultimate result to be?
Well, it also helps to frame things out, especially from a lawyer's perspective. If you start with your objective, right, and you say, I need the common area to be remedied because water keeps coming into my unit. And even if we fix the unit, it's not going to matter because the water event is going to happen again.
Yeah.
So by framing out the objective, you can kind of back into everything else. Everything else starts to make more sense.
Yeah.
And it gives relevancy to everything that you're going to do from that point on. So yes, thesis or, sort of opening statement, and then what do I want to get resolved?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It really makes people think too, which I think is really important here.
Correct. Okay, now going into chronology of events. This again is sticking to the facts, not the opinions. This is just laying it out. And I keep harping on the word clinical, but that is so important.
Yeah.
If we can remove the theatrics, it reads so much better. And again, even if let's say you're unable to write without putting a lot of theatrics in, write it, put it down, go back into it, and then cut it at that point.
Yeah. Or you said the last episode, write it in your spicy tone, then throw it into AI, say, remove all the emotion out of this and stay clinical, and then just
leverage technology. That's not a bad move either.
Yeah.
And so, with this, we even laid out how chronology should be laid out in a format, a table, but it goes date, event, evidence. So if you're referring to evidence, right, that's always important.
Yeah.
I went out to the property and I photographed the damage attached as Exhibit C.
Yep.
Right. Again, easy to read, very user friendly for the recipient of this document.
Yeah.
So organization is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also says if it's not documented, clearly note that the document is missing.
Yeah. And again, it shows a level of transparency. And if you've been wronged by a bad HOA, you're wearing the white hat, as they say, going into the meeting.
They're going to look for anything and everything to get you on.
Right.
So if you don't have that document, they're going to call you out for it. They're looking for everything. May as well call it out and say, this is why I don't have it.
And that goes to transparency, and that goes to the legitimacy of the homeowner.
And I think it bears repeating that this is taking a clinical approach, being super organized, super detailed, and transparent, is just setting the stage so that if it does get in front of a mediator, it does get in front of a judge, that you show a pattern of being reasonable, organized, calm. Correct. And that's going to bode really well for you in the end, oftentimes, if you're on the right side of things.
And I've said this before, we want to empower homeowners in such a way where they don't have to need a lawyer.
Yeah.
But sometimes the lawyer is inevitable.
Yeah.
Your board is so bad, they're so entrenched, you have to fight fire with fire. And it is a breath of fresh air when you have a homeowner come in and you're looking at the correspondence and they read that way.
Yeah.
It's you have a leg up.
Yeah,
so
for sure. All right.
That's the chronology. The next part is the governing documents. And we've said this before, those are so powerful. And there's this misconception where the governing documents, they empower the HOA, not the homeowner. But at the end of the day, if you can show violations, if you can show, hey, this was a responsibility of the HOA pursuant to provision 7.31, that is powerful. That is meaningful.
Yeah. We in the worksheet, you said name the document, the section number, a plain English summary, and why it matters. So that goes back to your point. In the CC&Rs, it's so often that outlines the responsibility of the board and or HOA and as a whole. And oftentimes where the dispute arises when it's the board or HOA that doesn't adhere to the CC&Rs, which becomes a super powerful tool for the homeowners because they can just literally cite it, call them out on it. And hopefully that'll result in swift resolution. But often if it doesn't, you still have it all prepared.
Correct. And it also shows a tremendous level of sophistication.
Yes.
Instead of saying, hey, you're not complying with the governing documents. That's not bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's so much more powerful when you're like, and here is the page number and the section.
Yeah.
That moves the needle.
For sure.
Or it should if the board isn't completely insane, right? Okay. So that's the governing documents. Very important. Now, the other part of this is state statute.
Yeah.
Now, we wrote this in a very agnostic way in the sense that it's an organizational tool. And so it's not designed specifically for any specific jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So again, if a state statute applies, look at it. If it's meaningful, if it actually tethers to your dispute, put it in there.
Yeah.
And that's where I don't think it's a bad idea to have a lawyer in your local jurisdiction. Just review it.
Yeah.
They may add additional firepower to it as well.
Yeah.
So state statute becomes a very important sort of weapon, for lack of a better word,
Yep.
in your case in terms of prosecuting your rights.
Yeah, and we have here is the statute citation, the summary in plain English, the relevance to the dispute. So again, this is just kind of go in order. If you have the governing documents, then cite the state statutes as well that adhere to that. So it just continues to stack the deck in your favor.
Correct. And it's building momentum at this point. You see?
Yeah.
So next part I really love because it forces homeowners to really think about reports, inspections, and expert material. And that can be very powerful, especially when you're dealing with real property damage, or you have a third party come out and say, yeah, this is 100% not the homeowner's fault. Yeah. This is the fault of HOA or, the management company on behalf of the HOA.
We've mentioned it before, but it doesn't come up every episode because it's sometimes not applicable to every dispute.
Right.
But the reports, inspection, and expert material is such an incredible tool that I think that people overlook. Me as a homeowner, I wouldn't have even thought about it.
Right.
We had, again, back to having the empowerment session with Scott, we went back to a condo, water intrusion in a condo. Yeah. And the roof in a condo, not yours, but there's water coming in from said roof into the condo. And so often we just saw another person I saw on Reddit that they're just ghosting them.
Right.
They're literally just ghosting them. Well, what can you do if there's ghosting you and you have no right to go on that roof and fix it yourself?
Right.
Where's your recourse? And the expert and the inspections and report becomes so mission critical. You can have a plumber come out without them opening up and provide an assessment and write a report, or a roofer or whoever. It said the water is coming from X to support your case, which is so incredible. I just don't think that people realize how much power and weight that holds especially when you have an HOA that is totally ghosting you.
Well, I agree. And look at it from, sort of the HOA's perspective. Even an attorney coming in and saying, hey, the water is coming from this location.
Yeah.
I'm a lawyer. I'm not a plumber. I'm not a roofer, right? Typically the homeowner, even if they are, there might be bias on that. So having a third party licensed contractor come in, for example, on the water intrusion issue, again, it carries so much weight.
Yeah.
It's not me, the lawyer, saying it. It's not the homeowner saying it. It's a third party who came in and said, yeah, I observed it. Here are my observations. Here's my professional take on what's happening.
Yeah, I love that so much. And then it could be, we put an engineer, contractor, mold, water intrusion, financial, or reserve analysis. You have a CPA do an audit. There's so much. There's so much that can come from this. And yes, it would probably cost you a few dollars to have it. But if this issue is important, it could pay dividends in the end.
The ROI is very high on this.
Yep. So
that was the expert report. Next, we have communications log.
Yeah, I love this too.
And this is kind of fun because we went a little bit further than most people may typically do.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to establish, let me back up. Homeowners come in and I see emails. And I say, okay, this was a beautiful email. What did the HOA say? What did the management company say? Mm-hmm. Oh, they didn't respond.
Yep.
Or they ignored it, or they gave me, they fired back, but it was completely off topic. And so the chronology or communication log, again, the format, how we laid this out was date, method. So was it an email? Was it a text message? So we're identifying how it was transmitted.
Yep.
We have a summary. But then we're going to put in several boxes. No response, delayed, inconsistent.
Yeah.
And if you start to do this and you really start to lay these things out, it is so powerful to see email sent on this day, no response. Email sent on this day, no response.
Yeah.
Email sent, and now you have a pattern in practice.
Yep.
And it's easy for the eye to scan the log and say, oh my God, this is like 7 communications and there's no response.
There's no response. Yeah.
Or a delayed response.
Yeah.
Right. It all starts again to stack the deck in the homeowner's favor.
Yeah.
They're empowered.
Yeah. And this is set up almost like a spreadsheet where you go down columns and you can add as many as you'd like and fill it in. So the communications log, especially the way we framed it, I think will be very helpful and very beneficial. Yep. Love it.
All right. Next, we're going into photographs. It's kind of self-explanatory, but photos are so powerful. Yeah. And to actually see them, to see the water damage, to see the mold, to see, the irrigation system or the drain that's clogged,
Yep.
that's on common area ground, right? I mean, these become very powerful and impactful.
Yep.
So we have a photograph section, which we articulate date taken, the location, and what do the photos show?
Yep.
Because that's another thing too. Sometimes you see a photo out of context. The homeowner, best practice is really to articulate, hey, this is why this matters.
Yep.
This was the drainage during the rainstorm that caused the flooding.
Yeah.
So.
And probably number them so they could be referenced in the earlier sections as well.
Precisely. And then lastly, because this is somewhat analog in some ways, we have a video log format, very similar. We have a file name, a date, a location, and what the video depicts.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, and this happens, over a period of time when you have a dispute, you shoot a lot of video, especially if property damage.
Yep.
And next thing you know, you have like 17 videos and you turn it over to the HOA. Now they have to go through 17 and they have to extrapolate out the relevancy. This way it shows this was the water intrusion event that occurred that destroyed the property. Here's the aftermath.
Yeah.
And now it's just, again, much more user-friendly.
Yep.
Right? Someone investigating this case, and what would likely happen too, especially if, depending on how serious the claim is, gets turned over to the lawyer for the HOA. Now the HOA attorney can jump into this case much quickly.
Yeah,
more quickly.
And we're hoping that a good lawyer on the HOA side, so it doesn't always happen, that they're the adult in the room. It's all of this. That's the hopes.
Yeah.
That's the hope. They see this, they say, oh, this is so far stacked. It's so clear. And they are the adult in the room and cause this thing to crumble.
Right. And you're doing the heavy lifting for them.
Yeah.
And so the video section, especially with the description, becomes very powerful.
Yeah.
Because I've seen homeowners turn over these very large logs. And I've gone through the videos. And I say, wow, this is tremendously impactful. But then I put myself in the shoes of an HOA attorney who doesn't care, who's like clicking on 2 or 3 videos and discards them because doesn't understand the weight of that evidence.
Yeah. I think it's important, though, too, going back to stay clinical. I think it's really, on a video, it's really easy to be emotional.
Correct.
In it. So to keep that tone, stay clinical, you're reading the x-ray.
Right.
You're not
exactly.
Not the diagnosis. It's like reading it, stay clinical, factual.
What's happening? Walk us through it. And then, of course, we always have to put in disclaimers. Don't ever record any audio or video if it's not permitted by state law.
Yeah.
So
don't incriminate yourself.
Correct. So, with this empowerment kit, the goal is really to ensure homeowners start to show up at these meetings, work with lawyers in a very efficient and very tactical way.
I'm just thinking of it from a more holistic view. That imagine you've written your notes and you go into IDR, you go into a board meeting with your little notepad or worse, your iPhone on the notes, the app, right? Versus a binder with an index and very, very detailed, calculated. You don't have to think about it. We outlined it for you in a way that a lawyer would usually approach something, and you are ready to go. You can just hand this over, to each.
Yeah, and on that point, best practice, if you're showing up at an IDR or a meeting with the board, bring more than one copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That way you're not having to bring the notebook. I mean, that's more of a logistical issue. It's a small thing, but it is a very powerful note.
But imagine showing up with this and it's completely organized. It's succinct. Everything's elevated, at least your vocabulary. And it's like, wow, these are well prepared.
Now you're dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the board doesn't see you scrambling for notes or flopping through a bunch of stuff or flipping through a bunch of stuff. They see a very meaningful approach to a dispute.
Well, you kind of hope that if someone's this methodical and takes and strategic about their approach, that they shouldn't be messed with.
Well, it shows investment. It shows thought. It shows intellectual rigor. And it shows that this is not going away.
Right.
So better to face the reality, do the right thing, than to fight this thing tooth or nail.
Yeah. I think this is important too, that again, even if this becomes so important as well, if you started from the beginning and you've deployed this and you're filling it out as things happen, you don't have to scramble. Okay, IDR went terribly. The tyrant came. The tyrant was the tyrant. We just had to end
Right.
early. You fill that out and you make the phone call to the lawyer after that, and you could just hand this over.
Right.
They don't have to think about it. It's like you don't have to organize it. It's done.
Right.
You just hand it over.
Well, there's so much power in preparation and organization.
Yeah.
And just, let's say a dispute's arising or it looks like it's going south, just to start working on this even well before it really goes south.
Yeah.
It puts you in such a strong position.
Yeah.
And so again, what we're doing here is we're empowering homeowners to think about these things in a much more elevated way. And this adds such a level of precision.
Yeah.
When a homeowner goes on the offensive.
Yeah. I like that the strike method is so intertwined in this in terms of like it's the 40,000 foot view.
Right.
And then this is just, you're going even further down.
This is execution.
This is execution.
This is the execution. This is the way to do it. And I'm thrilled, and I'm very happy with how it turned out because I see great things for the homeowners as a result of this tool.
Yeah. I just imagine, again, the differences are so stark in my mind of just showing up with the phone, showing up with this. I mean, I feel like there's so many people that are going to benefit from this, which is really exciting. And it goes back to the same thing. We have how many people come in here talking, through consultations or on Reddit or on comments or whatever that say, watch your podcast, I did, or whatever,
right.
Use your materials, and it resulted in X.
Precisely.
And then people see that and they say, I can do X too,
right?
Which it becomes a snowball effect where like meaningful change can actually happen, or you're giving the right tools to people that can actually use it, which is really rewarding.
So the question is, how do they use it? How do they find it? How does a homeowner get access to the Empowerment Kit?
Same thing. We post a lot on Reddit. Reddit is our communication hub. It's where we have the strike method with the sheets already there. We drive everyone back to that point because that is our communication tool. That is our central hub for communication.
Well, it's building a community, which I love, and a resource bank.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's how we've always seen it. Homeowners coming together, finding these resources, collaborating, and they say, hey, I love this, but I did something else.
Yeah, that is so cool. That is so cool. When they take something that the framework and they add something to it, and that can be shared with the community. Yes.
Correct. Knowledge is power, obviously. Yeah. And it's a cliche, but it's right.
Yeah. Well, just imagine. I mean, we hope that we can put in good information onto the subreddit, right? We can give tools, we can give podcasts, you're looking for a certain type of dispute, we can put really good information. We can give the short version. You can listen to the podcast on it. You can take the toolkit. And then you can see from the community, this worked, this didn't work. And then ask, questions like, hey, I would like to hear an episode about X, Y, or Z. I mean, this becomes a hub, and we've already done multiple episodes using that resource. So yes, that's a long answer and shameless plug for the subreddit Bad HOA, but that's where we will put it. We will put this episode with links to this kit there for people that want to get it involved or download it. So,
well, Marty, I think with that said, what a wonderful 2025 for empowering homeowners. And I love the way we're ending it strong on the kit, but we are building on this momentum.
There is so much in 26 that we have planned that I feel like, we've been doing, oh my gosh, it's been almost 2 years of this podcast. And, that first year, you're kind of like figuring it out. You're figuring out like your how you work in the area,
your position.
Yeah. And then this year was, okay, we've got a groove. We kind of figured it out, and we amped it up and did so many great things between some of the efforts in reform and Sacramento and there's a lot of really cool stuff, and the kits and the secondary series. There's so much great stuff that we planned out. But for 26, I think that's the next big jump.
Oh, we're ratcheting up.
Yeah.
This is the starting point of huge things in 26.
Yeah.
So I couldn't be more thrilled, Marty.
Yeah.
So thank you. And everyone, have a great New Year's, and we will see you in 2026.